This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. And welcome to my video taking a look at the best versions of the Superman characters. This is essentially me taking a look at everyone we know will be in Superman and seeing who the current best version of them are. I did this a few years ago when the Batman came out, and essentially I'm looking at who I think is currently the best version of each of these characters for characters that have at least two major appearances. There's some other versions of characters where there's like one major version, but really it's the only version. So there really isn't kind of alternative option. So I'm only gonna be looking at characters that we have major versions of. Basically, like the cutoff is sort of like Mr. Terrific from this movie, where he had a decent enough presence in the DCAU, mainly through the newer animated film of Justice League versus Fatal Five, for me to justify putting him on here. But since there's only that and the version from the Arrowverse, really is basically like the cutoff from it. You need to have two major appearances, as I said, so I will be ignoring any characters that do not have those two more major appearances. So let's go starting off, and first I'm going to go into major characters, and then I'm basically going to go through the IMDb cast list to see if there's anyone else I missed. So we'll start off with Superman, who will have the single exception of this because, well, I think you'll understand why I did it when I go and talk about it. Also, there will be no spoilers for Superman. The There will be spoilers for everything else. So if you haven't seen any other Superman project, there will be spoilers for those, up to and including Superman and Lois, but no spoilers for Superman at all. And starting with Superman, as I said, this is going to be an exception, but he's going to be a tie between two versions because how I think they just go and complement each other so perfectly, and that is the tie between the versions of Superman from Superman and Lois and Superman from the DC animated universe. And it was just too hard to choose between the two of these. Both are absolutely perfect versions of Superman, and my reason for putting them this way is, well, not only that I couldn't choose between them, but I think the Superman and Lois version shows slightly better the Clark Kent side of Superman, while the version from the DCAU shows the Superman side of Superman. And what I mean by that is, in Superman and Lois, it's far more focused on Clark Kent and the life with his family. And in Superman the Animated Series, it's far more focused on his time as Superman. And between the two of them, I just think that they just perfectly balance each other out. Both have just so many incredible moments, but I think the ones that just truly show who they are and just to truly understand them is just going and looking at the version from Superman the Animated Series. I think that, or Superman the Animated Series, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, and Batman Beyond. And he's played by multiple actors throughout them, where I think, honestly, his favorite moment of mine is actually the moment where he shows the most humanity in him, and that's when he does not want to help Darkseid and wants to let Apocalypse die. And the reason for that is how he was humiliated and he was attacked by Darkseid in the finale to Superman the Animated Series, where he was brainwashed by him. and he just had this absolute anger towards him and really just didn't want to help him out. And it's not because this showed him to be some kind of all-powerful being, it's because it showed him to be human and to have these human vulnerabilities. Him not wanting to help someone is not because he was some god who was above it. It was because he was a man who was absolutely humiliated and had his worst moment of his life caused by this person, and he just doesn't want to help him. Which also has one of the best Batman moments where Batman goes and slaps some sense into Superman, saying that this isn't you, Clark, and you need to go and help them because no matter how bad things were, this is still the right thing to do, and it's something that you would have to do regardless, and essentially you'd be regretting this if you don't. And after that, Superman realizes, yes, I hate Darkseid, and I'm super suspicious of him, but still, it is the right thing to do to go and save Apocalypse, even though I absolutely hate Darkseid and everything he's done. And ultimately, that's the reason why I just love that moment so much from him. It goes and shows his humanity and that he is truly just a great person, and that even though he could have some problems with it, he'll ultimately do the right thing. And honestly, it's just really great to show him how he is Superman, a person with very powerful abilities, but also still a man who does have flaws. And from Superman and Lois, I think that easily the best moment from him is those final 10 minutes where you see the final days of Clark Kent's life, everything that happens to him working with his sons, and then going and losing Lois, getting a dog, and eventually dying himself and being at peace with everything. Absolutely just beautiful final minutes of the show, and just between the two of them, I think that they just did such a great job telling this story that with this being kind of on its Clark Kent side and showing his life was really great, but also seeing the Superman side and with him and both are great. But as I said, I think that they both just complement each other so much that I really just can't pick one. Both are incredible, and this is really going to be the only one where it's a tie because I just really can't choose between the two of these. And just as a little bonus, I'm also going to talk about the odds that the new version from Superman is going to beat these versions. And with this one, I think that there's a chance, but personally, I doubt it because these two versions are just absolutely perfect. And while I think that this version of Superman is going to be a very great version, I just can't go and see myself liking him more because these two are absolutely perfect, although I think there is a chance. Personally, I just don't think I could go and rate any other version of Superman above these two. Although I do need to give an honorable mention to Christopher Reeve because he actually is a really incredible Superman and does such a great job, but personally, he's not my favorite, and I know he's many others' favorites, and because of just how iconic he is, I feel it's necessary for me to give him that honorable mention. Now moving on to Lois Lane. Easily, I have to pick the version of Lois Lane from Superman and Lois, and yeah, honestly, this is just a really great version. She is not only the great reporter looking to always expose the truth and do the right thing, but she's also a great partner to Superman. She's a great and caring mother to her children, and honestly, she's just perfect all around. She really does everything right. She has great, compelling stories with her where she's essentially the co lead of the series, and some of the greatest moments of the show is focused around her. Season 3 was absolutely heartbreaking as you saw her going and suffering from cancer and her fight through it. It was just very well done, and in those final moments, as I mentioned for Superman, when you learn that her cancer returned and she lost the battle to it, it was just absolutely tragic, but also very well done. And I just, absolutely loved the series with her, and she was just done so well that easily I have to pick her as the best version. Again, I don't know if the newest version of Lois Lane could go and overtake this version, but there is a chance, far greater than Superman, but I still really doubt it because this version of Lois was just absolutely perfect. Now moving on to the version of Jimmy Olsen. I think I have to pick My Adventures with Superman because, well, he's really the only version that feels like an actually developed character. Jimmy Olsen really just never is done too well. He's always just he's just a background character. Even in the DCAU, he really just is kind of just there. I really don't think there's any major appearances for him besides the single adventure where he becomes Superman's pal. But really, besides that, I can't think of really anything of him in the DCAU, and the only version where he ever really has true development is Supergirl, and well, that version isn't a great version of Jimmy Olsen. It doesn't even feel like Jimmy Olsen, so that's just automatically disqualified from this list. Not the worst version of Jimmy Olsen ever. That would definitely have to be Zack Snyder's version, but really just looking at all of them, the only one that really feels like Jimmy Olsen, someone who is Superman's pal and an actual character, is the version from My Adventures with Superman, who is actually a really good friend with Clark and Superman and figures out his identity and honestly is just a really solid version, but I'd say there's a good chance he could be overridden. As I said, it's really hard to pick a good version of Jimmy Olsen, and this was the best one of them. But if Jimmy Olsen is done really well in this, then I would be happily able to give that version the best version of Jimmy Olsen. Another good mention is the version from Superman and Lois, but well, he only had just a few minutes of screen time, and they didn't do enough with him in that, so I just can't give that to him because he's just a glorified cameo in that series. Going to Krypto, this is the exact same boat as Jimmy Olsen, where Krypto really hasn't had too many major appearances. Technically, besides two that I've never watched, which is the Krypto animated series and DC League of Super Pets. And since I haven't watched either of those, I really I'm having a hard time choosing between them because in basically all of these, Krypto is just kind of a dog in there. And I'll just say very easily, this version, if he has any really major appearances and any memorable scenes, well, I'm going to be easily putting this one as the best version of Krypto because, well, to be honest, I said I don't remember any of these versions, but if I had to, I guess the version from Titans, which is the most memorable one, because basically all the other ones, yeah, they're just basically brief cameos, and again, the only reason this is going to be on here is because there are two other versions where Krypto does have major appearances. But since I never watched either of those, I just can't give it to it, and I have to give it to the Titans version. So, yeah, there is the Titans version, but I'm going to say this is basically a guarantee that this new version of Krypto is going to go and take over as the best version of Krypto because, well, as I said, it's the Titans version, and that's not really a great version. It's just the only version I've seen that isn't just part of a ending montage like the one from Superman and Lois, part of a single episode. like it was in Batman the Brave and the Bold, or part of either flashbacks or visions of an alternate timeline, like it was in the DCAU. So, is that really there is no choice here? It has to be the version from Titans, and I basically just have to go and pick this version because there's literally no other choice from me since I haven't seen the other two versions of Krypto. Up next, we have Lex Luthor, and easily I'm giving this to the DCAU version. He is just honestly the best version, easily, and he is the version I really like. The manipulative, conniving businessman who also just hates Superman and wants to destroy him because he just doesn't like him. He's just absolutely perfect as he is a main antagonist in essentially every project that Superman appears in besides Batman Beyond. And the Batman Beyond appearance of Superman is a single appearance where he goes up against Starro the Conqueror and is being controlled by Starro. And by that point, Luthor is at least presumed dead because not fully sure if he does die at the end of Justice League Unlimited or if he is technically still alive. But just looking at him, he is absolutely perfect. He easily just shows just how incredible he is as he is such a major antagonist. He causes so many problems. He goes and is essentially able to get away with everything in Superman the Animated Series. No matter what he does, he finds a way to weasel out of it. And this is done until he has that kryptonite poisoning, which causes just him to be a little more reckless and nappy thinking through things and does get caught in Justice League. And then from there, he becomes a more direct antagonist, putting on his war suit and going and fighting directly against the Justice League. And serves as a major antagonist so many times until he is eventually released in the one where they go and fight the Justice Lords. Then he returns in Justice League Unlimited to be an absolutely great antagonist there. And again, in the final season of Justice League Unlimited, he's again returning as a major antagonist until he accidentally brings Darkseid back and is forced to work with heroes. This version of Lex Luthor is just absolutely perfect, and I don't think there's a chance of him being overridden by this new version, but honestly, there is a chance, but I just don't think so because this version of Luthor is just absolutely perfect. Now going into some of the more minor characters, we'll start off with Mr. Terrific, and I just have to give it to the Arrowverse version. And I didn't love the Arrowverse version, but the DCAU one just barely qualified to be on this list, as I mentioned in the intro. And I just kind of have to give it to this version. Yes, technically it is a different character, where the name is Curtis Holt instead of Michael Holt, but the character is essentially the same character, just with a different first name, so I'm going to count it. And again, this is an easy. This is going to be overridden because, yeah, he had like what I think he appeared in every season from season 4 of Arrow to I think season 6, and then had a brief appearance in season 7. But I just can't give him any higher rating because I mean I didn't love this version of the character. I always found him annoying and just an attempt to be their version of Cisco, and I just really didn't love this version of him. So I'm probably already going to be thinking that this version is the better version, even though I haven't seen the movie yet as of recording this video. Guy Gardner, again, this is one where basically I just have to pick the most prominent version. Although this one I actually do really enjoy, which is Guy Gardner from Batman the Brave and the Bold. And this version of Guy Gardner is honestly great. It perfectly captures who he's supposed to be, this annoying, arrogant, like just really unpleasant person that you just don't want to deal with. And this, of course, also has the scene that's required to have in any version of Guy Gardner interacting with Batman, where he annoys Batman so much that Batman knocks him out with one hit to put him in his place. And well, this needs to be the version of the DCU, and if it is, he has a good chance of contending with this version. But this version is very solid. He is the primary Green Lantern of the Batman the Brave and the Bold series, although you do see Hal Jordan also appear in that one. And well, to be clear, I'm also only looking at the Guy Gardner versions. I'm not going to be looking at other versions because with Mr. Terrific, yeah, those were essentially the same character, but Guy Gardner, Hal Jordan, John Stewart, Kyle Rayner, and all the other Green Lantern versions, those are different characters and are intended to be different characters. So for this one specifically, I'm only looking at the Guy Gardner because if not, I'd be giving this to John Stewart from the DCAU if I'm just looking at Green Lanterns in general, but I'm not. So really, if looking at the versions of Guy Gardner, but there are other appearances of him, mainly in Green Lantern the animated series. His brief appearances in Young Justice, which is at least semi-canon to the Green Lantern animated series. But really, only the versions I can think of is I think he had some brief appearances in other stuff, but since he has those two major appearances, those are the two I can really think of, and I just had to give it to Batman the Brave and the Bold since that is my childhood TV show, and again, I think there's a chance that this new version of Green Lantern could go and become a better version, but I'm not really sure. We'll see when Superman comes out later today or tomorrow, depending on where you are and when you want to go see it, because I'm seeing it later today. Moving on now to the next character with Hawkgirl, and yeah, she has appearances in other stuff like the Arrowverse. She has appearances in the DC. I can't think of its name. The Tomorrowverse. But I think everyone knows the answer for this one. This is the DCAU version. Such as an extremely morally complex character and easily just incredibly well done. It was just absolutely tragic to see her go and betray everyone she knows in the finale to Justice League, and that alone just gives her the best version of Hawkgirl. And it also doesn't mention that the Arrowverse version of Hawkgirl was just not good, and that looking at really any other versions, the Tomorrowverse version, I mean, it was fine, but it was nowhere as great as the DCAU version, where she was just so incredibly well done and such a complex character. Her relationship with Jon Stewart was great, and all the more complexities after she betrayed both the people of Earth and her own people, the Thanagarians, was just absolutely incredible to look at. And her returning in Justice League Unlimited was just truly great to see how she had to try and redeem herself for how she betrayed really everyone she knew and cared about. It was just really, really well done. Going to Metamorpho now. Again, easily this is DC AU version. There are some other versions. There's Batman the Brave and the Bold and the one from, I believe it was Beware the Batman. But just none of those are as great as the one from the version from the DCAU, where I think his only really major appearance was in the Justice League episode that introduced him. I think he was in the background and everything of Justice League Unlimited, but that was really his only major appearance, and he was just really well done there. Him being the friend of Jon Stewart and everything that just happened to him being manipulated by Simon Stagg was just really great, and honestly, it was just really well done. I think that it was super interesting to see, and honestly, it was, as I said, it was a really solid story. I I think that he could easily be overdone since, yeah, it's a more minor appearance, but we'll see how they do him in this version because I am still excited. Okay, now to just talk about, I'm going to talk about all of Superman's parents at the same time, both Jonathan and Martha and Jor-El and Lara-El. I think that for all of them, I have to pick the DCAU versions where they just serve as just great examples. We have the opening with Jor-El and Lara for the first episode of Superman, the animated series, where we see everything they do for their son and all the sacrifices they have to make, and really just how they go and send their son as the last hope after everything fails. Really, that's the most major appearance of them, besides them being in holograms talking to their son. And just through that, I truly have to pick those versions as the best versions. And it's the exact same for Jonathan and Martha, where we also get an episode where they mainly focus on being the second one, where we see Clark growing up and having them just appear throughout the series as a place for Clark to go to and be with is honestly just really great. And while it is possible for them to be overtaken, I don't think it's likely because they were just so well done in this, and I just really have to pick these versions because really they are the best versions of the characters, and they all are just incredible versions of Superman's parents, both his birth parents and his adoptive parents. Going through another two that honestly I don't really think I could think of any other versions of them. I know there are other versions of Otis and Miss Tessmacher, but I really can't think of any other versions besides the ones from the Christopher Reeve films. And as I said, I know there's other versions, but these are the only two I could think of off the top of my head. And I know there was one of Miss Tessmacher from Supergirl. I don't remember her at all, but don't think it was a really great character. And I'm sure, like, I know Otis has appeared in other stuff, but really they mainly use the character of Mercy as Lex Luthor's main henchman in most other projects. So, as I said, I really can't think of much that Otis himself has been in. I think he was in, I'm pretty sure he was in Superman and Lois, but I really don't remember him too much. So I'm just going to give it to these versions from the Christopher Reeve versions, since these are probably the most iconic and well known, and they're basically ones that I think barely deserve to be on the list because of them not having too many major appearances, but I'm just gonna put them on here because I know there are other versions that have at least decent appearances for them. Going to Perry White, I'd say the DCAU version. All of them are essentially the same character, just kind of the newspaper boss, and they're essentially all the same. What I can think of the most is that version from DCAU, and well, at least for being good, because I don't think that the DCEU version was great. But really, besides that, yeah, I'd say there's a good chance that he could be taken over as the best version because, again, Perry White, never a super major character, and he's just mainly there in the background, so can't think too much of him. But I'd say, yeah, the DCAU version, but easily that could be overdone by the new version. Then going to Maxwell Lord. I mean, there's only a few versions. There's the one from Wonder Woman 1984, which is he's more of a meme than anything. The one I'm picking, which is the DCAU version, where I mean he was there, but not a super major appearance. He was an antagonist of one of the episodes, the one with the tie into Cadmus, and that's mainly why he's here because of his tie into the Cadmus storyline. And then I think he also appeared in Supergirl, but don't really remember too much of that version, so I'm picking this version. And yeah, easily this could be overtaken by this version because, as I said, not done too much besides him being a giant meme from Wonder Woman 1984, and really can't pick that version just because the only reason he's memorable from that movie is because of the, life could be good, but it can be better meme. But yeah, I really have to pick that version. Now I'm going to go into a few speculations of characters we don't really have confirmation will be in the movie, but we do know they're either appearing later on in the the DCU, or we know that they have a good connection to characters in here. And I'll just be looking at these just for the fun of it. And again, we don't have any confirmation that these characters will be in the movie, but based on other stuff, including the novel Superman Welcome to Metropolis, I will be mentioning them. And these will only be characters related to Superman. And I do know there are other characters I didn't look at. There's characters like Rick Flag Sr., where I think the only appearance we've seen of him is in this new version of the DCU, so I can't really look at him. A bunch of the Daily Planet staff where really they haven't had any major appearances really anywhere besides just kind of random appearances in the background. Really, the only one I can think of is Cat Grant, where she only has a major appearance in Supergirl, but nowhere else. So I really can't just look at those versions. And looking at the first one, we have Simon Stagg, and yeah, well, we don't know he's going to be in this. We know Metamorpho will be in here. We'll be most likely seeing his origin, and we know that we've seen signs for Stagg Enterprises in trailers, so I would highly suspect that Simon Stagg would be in this. And well, then I'm going to be saying that best version is the DCAU version. Doesn't have too many appearances, but he's almost always the exact same character, this shady businessman that is really doing whatever it takes and eventually does cause the creation of Metamorpho. So I'm going to pick that version because he has very emotional scenes and is very well done in this. But yeah, I think there's a good chance he could be over in this version if he does appear. Again, this is pure speculation, but I do think that he could be overwritten and have a better version in this. Going up to Supergirl, we do know she has her own movie, and I wouldn't be surprised if she has some kind of post-credit scene or brief cameo in this. Easily best version of it is the version from the Arrowverse. While the writing not always the best, I still think this is a great version of her. She was well acted. I just think that most of the time the script she was given wasn't just the greatest. And I'd say there's a good chance she could be taken over by the new version of Supergirl because it could have just a way, way better script because that was really the only thing that held back the version of Supergirl from the Arrowverse because Supergirl generally just wasn't a great show. Did have a few good moments, but she really shined in the crossovers. So while it's definitely possible. I'm not really sure because I think that everything from this Arrowverse was solid. It just kind of got stuck with a really bad script, and that's the biggest problem of that version of Supergirl. Also, the DCAU version is a pretty solid one, but just as a full-on character, she had her own series and was a really solid version. Really, the only problem, as I said, was most of just the scripts and storylines that affected the character, but the performance was still really solid. Another guess is Metallo. He's in the novel, and that's no guarantee that he will be in the movie. Does make sense if he could appear in the movie, but again, no real guarantee of that. Best version of Metallo is the DCAU, where he served as the first enemy Superman fought and just keeps appearing as antagonist throughout it. But again, no real guarantee he'll appear. We do know he was in the Welcome to Metropolis novel as the main antagonist of that. and he could appear in this, but honestly, I really have no idea if he will, and it's just far, far more speculation. Finally, we have Braniac, and I don't know what it is. I just had a feeling that Braniac is somehow going to be involved with this movie. I haven't looked at any leaks or anything, so this is just complete speculation on my part, but I felt like Braniac was going to be somehow involved in this movie, and that he's going to secretly possibly be the main antagonist of it. Again, I have nothing to go on with this. I have not looked at any leaks or anything. This is a complete guess at complete random. I have no idea if I'm right, but the Brainiac version I'd look at is the version from the DCAU again because he's just so great. He's an antagonist that appears throughout it, and even has that great storyline where he's mixed up with Lex Luthor. And yeah, honestly, that's really everyone I could think of that is in the movie or has a chance of being in it. And really, just looking at everyone in it, you'll see that this is essentially a mixture of mainly versions of the DCAU and Superman and Lois because those are just both incredible versions that really got almost all the characters right. There's a few versions where they really didn't appear too much, and that goes to other universes, but mainly those are just the two best versions of Superman, as I said, which is why they were a tie because they just understand Superman so well, and DCAU and Superman and Lois were both just incredible projects and both incredible to watch. So yeah, they're essentially tied there. But yeah, honestly, I want to know what you think. Do you disagree with any of my choices? Who are your favorite versions? And are you looking forward to Superman? Again, I'll be watching this later today, and I am just very, very excited for it. So please let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you on the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.